It is round 2 of the Illuminating Round 2025 VASL tournament, and I have drawn Dave Moreski. From our previous games, I know that Dave is a great and worthy opponent. So, when the scenario for the second round was announced, another pre-release scenario from Pete Schelling that we were playtesting, and Dave offered me to choose sides, I set about assessing the relative strengths of each side and chose the Germans as my preference. As an unpublished scenario, there was no record to go by. Initially, the Germans looked up against it with the high firepower of the Americans against them, and the victory building being attacked from both sides. However, the more I thought about it, the more feasible the German defence became. Here are a few things to note. The Americans have a lot of open ground or low tem ground to cover before assaulting the building. Management of time is therefore critical here. This led to my first observation that the Germans could be successful by disrupting the American timetable as they moved with little or no cover. By my calculations, the Americans would need 3 player turns for executing the final assault of the building. Also, the American range is limited, so their full firepower will take time to bring to bear. The observation about the end stages of the game is that the Americans must clear the whole building N6 to claim victory. Likely there will be a bug hunt as the American tries to clear all 3 levels. The Germans need to consider how to manage this situation to their advantage. With 4 stairwells, it will be hard to block access to the upper levels. Additionally, avoiding upper level encirclement will be key for endgame routing options. This, combined with the SSR, which allows Germans in the building to ignore units outside the building when routing, could be a great help. Another thing to note is the availability and usage of the Steel Granite 41 for the 37L AA gun. Chapter H is your friend here for German Ordnance number 28, and Ordnance Note B as well, and C8.31 HE equivalency. Finally, it's important to remember that defending the victory building does not have to be all done from the building itself. With this in mind, I went about my strategy and setup. Firstly, I decided to adopt a divide and conquer approach and attempt to disrupt the timetable of the Americans arriving from offboard in the west. They have the shortest distance to travel and are most vulnerable in their initial movement phase. To do so, I set up 2 LMGs to cover the V-shaped roads, leader-directed to avoid that cower result, hoping to force them to the flanks or risk a 1-2 fire lane. The MMG and 9-1 leader are also facing that direction to cover other movement options. Additionally, I set up a squad in the 3-hex outbuilding. All units in buildings set up in level 2 where able to see into and over the orchards with a maximum hindrance of +1. See the last sentence of B14.2 Seasons for an important line of sight rule. I had a half squad and the Panzerschreck as a small mobile defence and thought it might be useful against Americans taking up wall advantage or as they went into either of the 2 other multi-hex buildings. The 37L AA gun was set up to disrupt the advance from this same flank, adjacent to the building to hopefully surprise my opponent using the Steel Granite 41 heat if any Americans made it there. In the east, I placed most of my dummy units to make it look equally defended as the west. However, the only real unit was on the southern flank and in the church. These units' job is to delay and fall back towards the southern end of the victory building where I planned for the last-ditch defence. My hope was that, with the American attack in the west disrupted and blunted, the German units could pivot to defend against the attack from the east, which would likely be on the doorstep and in strength, and then stack the southern end of the building to make it as hard as possible, with what units could make it back there from the outer defences. So, let's see how things panned out. In playing the log file, look out for some initial German successes in the west, a critical mid-game pin of the German 6+1 leader, followed by a timely self-rally of the American 9-2 leader, then a momentum swing back to the Americans, and finally a very close finish. Thanks to my opponent Dave, who endured a major personal morale check mid-game, David Martin and the designer Pete Schelling for this deceptive scenario. Now, play the log file.